the Fuji GFX100RX. Let's talk about it. All right, so to be honest, I haven't felt this energized about something in photography in a long time. And so that's why I haven't really made any videos. And today, I'm hyped, dude. And I'm hyped for maybe different reasons than other people are hyped on about this camera, but we'll get into that. But first, let's just talk about this announcement. Fuji GFX100RF was announced today, and the entire photography world is talking about it, fighting about it, arguing, faffing about, and I think that that's interesting. I'm gonna just go through some of the things that I like about this camera, some of the things that I dislike about this camera, who I think this camera is for. I have some thoughts. The things that I like. Number one, it's the first compact digital medium format camera that we've ever seen. So that's cool. I think that's great for photography. I think it's only going to turn the key to what will be more compact medium format cameras, or even just compact full frame. I think it signals, and the way it's been received too, I think all of that signals that there is a niche, or I don't even know if it's niche at this point. People want smaller cameras that are still capable and powerful. And I think the GFX100RF is like the perfect answer, the perfect initial answer from Fujifilm. Overall, design-wise, I think it's a cute camera. You know, it's Fujifilm is known for their cute cameras, and I'm a fan. The thing that I think that I like the most about this camera is the aspect ratio dial. I personally love shooting in different aspect ratios. That's why I have a 6x6 camera, a 6x7 camera, a 6x4.5 camera, full frame, APS-C. I have all these different formats. So to be able to just switch your format and switch your mode of thinking as you're shooting, I actually like that. I think that's a really cool touch. And I think that's probably my favorite thing about the camera, is just the fact that you can kind of frame your mind with the aspect ratio dial. And then there's the 28mm lens. I think that that's cool. I love 28mm. I love just a little bit wider than 35. I think it's just a better focal length for everyday things. 35 sometimes is just a little too, I don't know, boring or something for me. I really just kind of have been, for the last many years, I've been shooting 28. And whenever I go back to 35, although I still can shoot it and I still like it, I'm kind of happy that this new fixed 35 f4 lens is the equivalent of like something, you know, around 27, 28. I think that's perfect. This is kind of what inspired me to make this video. Is I had posted a threads and everyone got mad at me about my initial first knee-jerk thoughts that I had of this camera. And by the way, I stand by every single thing that I said. Well, not every, there's one thing that I don't necessarily stand by, but everything else I stand by. The things that I really dislike about this camera in particular, and before I get into this, I just want to say it's okay to have an opinion about a camera brand. They're not people, okay? You don't have to be emotional about this. I love Fujifilm. I have Fujifilm cameras. Overall, I'm a huge fan of Fujifilm cameras, what Fujifilm means to photography. I am all about everything that they stand for. So with that out of the way, time to shit on this camera a little bit. So if you're sensitive, just plug your ears for a little bit. Number one, it's not a rangefinder. Yes, it's a rangefinder styled camera is what Fuji is claiming, but like I personally feel like it's misleading to have rangefinder in the name of the camera when it's not a rangefinder. If you've shot with a rangefinder, you understand what that is and what it is for your photography. It's a completely unique experience, whereas this is just an EVF experience. And so I just find that it's a little misleading right off the hop, and I will say that kind of irked me a little bit. And then after thinking about it a little more, you know, maybe rangefinder is evolving as a word in this new era of photography that we're kind of entering into. But I still think it's a little bit misleading, and it's not a rangefinder. So why even say that? Anyways, that irked me from the get-go. And then when I saw the price, I mean, that shit is crazy. Fuji has always kind of prided themselves in being sort of the everyday man or woman's camera brand. And I think the way they've positioned this camera is still trying to be the everyday man or woman's camera brand. Like from the ads that I've seen, from all of the marketing, from all of the different creators that are creating videos about this, they're basically saying that this is an everyday person's camera, but at $4,999 US dollars, I believe is the price. $4,899. This is not the everyday man's camera. And I think like a lot of people, there's always been this comparison with Fuji and Leica, because Fuji has been the affordable Leicas. You know, they had the Texas Leica from back in the day. And then obviously all their X100 cameras, and just all of their cameras are like the affordable Leicas for the everyday person. And this is not that. And I understand it's a medium format camera, but it's like, why then market to the everyday person if you know it's not that? I don't know. I just think the price is wild for this camera. I would way rather get a GFX. I would way rather get a Leica, to be honest. And so to explain what I mean, I guess, by I would way rather get a Leica, here are the things that I think make this camera less desirable than other cameras on the market that aren't necessarily medium format, but that just give you everything you kind of need for what intended audience this camera is positioned for. The camera doesn't have IBIS, so on a 100 megapixel sensor, IBIS is kind of important. It's more important than it is on a full frame camera or an APS-C camera, in my opinion. I had the Leica M11. That obviously doesn't have IBIS, and I found it much more difficult to get super sharp images, steady images, on the Leica M11 than I ever have on the M10, the M9, anything like that. I just think it's a different thing when we're dealing with medium format cameras, and I think not having IBIS was a miss. Now, if the lens would have been a bit faster, maybe you don't need IBIS as much because you can always crank the shutter speed a little bit more, but we got a f4 lens on this thing too. And so with the f4 lens, no IBIS, I know that there's like an argument that people are having right now about the fact that you don't need IBIS and that medium format cameras have always had typically slower lenses like an f4 or like look at, so the f4 lens. This is the Fuji GS645S, one of my favorite cameras of all time, and it has an f4 lens. The thing that people aren't saying, and I don't really want to go down this rabbit hole because I personally don't care about this debate, because I think that 100 megapixels is a very large image, but it's not a medium format. The sensor of the GFX100 is not medium format size. It's smaller. Some people call it like a super full frame. So an f4 lens on a super full frame GFX100 is not going to be the same as an f4 lens on a medium format camera. So in this instance, I'm a little let down by the f4 lens. I'll be honest. It's small. That's great. But once you add the hood on, like I think you could have just made a bigger lens, you know? I feel like you could have got to f2.8 or even f3.5. I know it's only 0.5 of a difference, but I feel like anything would help in this instance. And I just feel like it's kind of a big miss to not have either IBIS or like f2.8 or something like that. And I think something that maybe they tried a little too hard to do was like keep it so compact, you know? I feel like they could have added a little bit more weight to it to be able to give us these extra features that I think would really take this camera from me sitting here bitching about some of this stuff to like me being like, holy shit, my life is different now. Those are like the bulk of the things that I don't like. And now I'm like, this whole morning, I've been trying to figure out like, who is this camera exactly for? Because like I said, the everyday camera person can't afford this camera. Street photographers, who needs 100 megapixel images if you're a street photographer? Myself, like I probably have a hit rate of like 5% when I'm out on the street taking photos. 5% of keepers, 95% of shit that I throw away. And to have to like cull through 100 megapixel images and find, 5% of those, and then what do you do with the rest? Do they just sit on your hard drive? I don't know. I just can't think of a scenario for a street photographer who would ever need 100 megapixels. And I personally would rather get like the GFX50 or whatever it is for this kind of thing. I think that would be a much more useful camera on the street than this one. Do portrait photographers want to use a 28mm equivalent lens? I don't know, especially with f4. I feel like no, like this isn't for portrait photographers either. Do landscape photographers want just one lens and a 28 lens at that? No, like maybe they want more like landscape photography on a telephoto is beautiful too sometimes. I'm really trying to understand who this is for, and I know because I know that there's people out there that this camera is for because they let me know on threads. I think like if I had to think of one group of photographers that this camera is best positioned for, it would be documentary style photographers, people who use their camera to document like life, perhaps professionally, document professionally the lives of people, cultures, whatever. I think this camera could be good for that. But again, the f4 lens, no IBIS, I feel like it's a hard camera to trust to be able to do everything, to be able to be the one camera that you take across the world with you in all the different lighting scenarios you face as a documentary photographer. I think it might be a good camera to have, but I don't know if it's your everyday only camera, if that makes sense. I don't know. And I'm so happy to be proven wrong on this entire video. Like I would love to get it in my hands one day to be able to just see if I'm wrong, because it's happened to me so many times, with my Leica Q2M. I bought that camera to resell it, and then I took a couple pictures and it changed my life. With the Ricoh GR3, I didn't like that camera for the first 6 months that I had it until I realized how useful of a camera it was, and now it's also one of my favorite cameras. So I've definitely been wrong before, and I'm not scared to be wrong. But in this instance, I'm just like trying to figure out who this particular camera, this iteration of it, is for. Now, what would I personally rather see? I just want an X100 full frame camera. That's really all I need. If it had a 28 lens, even better. If it had a 35, I'd be cool with that. If it had a 43, I'd be fine with that. I don't need 100 megapixels for an everyday camera. It's just not something that I need. A full frame camera, that's all we're asking for. If you can do something like this and make this incredible camera that is 100 megapixels, compact, you can definitely make a full frame version of that with IBIS. Might not even need IBIS if you have a fast enough lens. I don't particularly need IBIS. But if you can put a fast lens in it, that's kind of really all I need for a Fuji camera at this point in my life. I would just love a full frame Panasonic Lumix S9 competitor. And I think that camera is the answer. And I think this camera is a good step towards that answer. Cameras like the Fuji GFX100RF and the Sigma BF, I think these cameras are all signaling one thing, and that is that we want better cameras in smaller packages. We want a focus on the design of the camera. We want to look cool when we shoot. Both of those cameras, this GFX and the BF, are steps, like the first iteration of steps into that new era of photography that is tiny cameras that look cool. And for that, I think this camera is going to be extremely important from a wider historical perspective. I think it's going to kind of change the landscape, obviously, because now we have tiny medium format cameras, albeit with caveats. But I mean, the first iteration of something shouldn't, I guess, always be, they're not going to nail it on the first try. I mean, I'm going to continue shooting my medium format film cameras. I love film. And this camera just definitely is not for me. I'm not particularly intrigued by it, to be perfectly honest. But I am intrigued about what it's doing for the culture of photography right now. I haven't heard this much back and forth about any camera in so long. You know, there's a rumor that Leica is going to be coming out with an EVF rangefinder styled camera. And so maybe this is just the new trend, the new wave, and maybe I just need to get on it. At the moment, this camera is like Fujifilm right now is like the Jaguar for photography. You know, like it is doing something that is bold, something that is kind of shocking to a lot of people, but also kind of the answer for a different group of people. And it has us all talking. And I think that's just, you know, I haven't made a video in forever because I just don't have anything to say really. But on this particular day, when the GFX100RF was announced, I felt like I just had some shit to say. So I just wanted to ramble for a bit. Thank you for watching. What do you think about this camera? I just want you guys to blow up the comments and tell me your thoughts. Is this camera for you? If so, why? Like, what makes it for you? What are you looking for in a camera that other cameras can't fulfill? That this camera just is the answer to those problems? I genuinely want to know because I'm just curious. I just want to know who this is for. Again, if I ever get it in my hands, I'm sure my mind will change. And you know what? I'm super happy for my mind to change. So try and change my mind in the comments. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.